everyone. I'm your host, Dominique.
And I'm Christina, and we are the Connected in Glass podcast.
This podcast is meant to be an educational and inspirational podcast about glass art for all listeners. A love of glass art connects people of all walks of life and in all generations. Let us celebrate this by getting to know each other. Each interview will have 3 sections: getting to know this week's artist, diving into more detail about their particular form of glasswork, and going into the deep stuff that isn't usually openly discussed. These are meant to be real-life coffee table discussions about hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We hope that with every episode, you'll be left with a sense of connection, a new perspective, and maybe a boost of creative mojo to tackle your next aspiration.
Today we're interviewing Jo Andersson. Jo is a glass artist based in Sweden who's been working with glass for about 13 years. Hi.
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 Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm super
stoked. We're really excited. So we're just going to kind of jump right in. We have 3 main sections, but we find that it pretty much flows naturally in that way. At first, we just want to know about you, maybe everything about you besides glass. So where you live, what you do for a living, what you enjoy besides working in the studio, and then kind of work into your life with glass.
Yeah, totally. I live in Småland, Sweden, and Boda by the glass factory. Right now I'm in Stockholm because I'm up here working at Blossoknoda. It's a store that I'm represented by. And let's see, what do I like to do? I'm really into metaphysics and spirituality. That's like one of my main things. I'm super into like reprogramming the subconscious mind and like becoming more and more aware of myself, personal self-healing, self-development. I'm super into that. And then for fun and things, I like to play guitar and cook. Pretty simple. For a living right now, I'm working at the glass factory in Boda, and I am setting up their neon studio. So that is currently what I'm doing. And then I'm also, I started a pop-up group with some friends, some craftspeople, and we sell our work once a month. And then I have my website and things. My goal is to be self-sufficient with my own work. So that's the goal for 2021, is to get that going. Yeah.
Cool.
I make light installations too. So I'm really interested in light. So all the metaphysical stuff like ties into the light.
Really cool. So tell us, when was your first experience with glass? How did you get into it?
I have to say I was really, really young, actually. So my parents are Swedish, and I'd come back to Katrineholm in the summertime. My dad has a summer house, so we'd go to Reimyra. It's like 45 minutes away from there. And I'd just be totally entranced by the glass blowers. I would beg my parents to go to Reimyra just to watch them. So it was always just kind of a seed in the back of my mind. And then I actually just kind of fell into it. In undergrad, I was a bio major. I was going to study to be a pediatrician, and like the second quarter, I failed all my classes. So I took an art class and ended up in the glass department. And that's how I got into it. I was probably like 19 when I started.
Cool. So take us on from there. So you did glass in school, and how did you know right away that was going to be what you were going to do for a career?
Yeah, I definitely did. I was definitely not I was pretty scared of the material at first, to be completely honest. I was a completely different person back then. I was still really in my trauma brain, and glass blowing was so great for me because it helped me understand the present moment. Like it drew me into the present moment like nothing else could. Before that, I was just constantly dissociating or like up in my head thinking about the past and the future. But I definitely was not good at it. You know, it took years and years and years and years of practice before I actually started feeling like really, really comfortable with the material. So I think I was in undergrad for about 6 years. And then I moved out west. I moved first to Portland. I worked there doing like Make It Nows and things like that. And then I moved up to Seattle and did production and worked with different artists. And I eventually ran a hot shop, which that was a really great experience for me. Very stressful, but a lot of fun too.
Can you tell us a little bit about the different styles of glass that you have training in and where you picked up those skills?
Yeah, totally. Well, I love blowing glass. That's my main thing. Like blown vessels, like all my light vessels. Or I also like to blow really big. Like I love like having a big team and blowing huge and like the adrenaline rush of that. Cane work, a lot of Venetian techniques. Love pulling cane, different kinds of cane. I love. I also like making cups. Mold blown stuff. I learned that when I went to the National School of Glass in Nybro in Sweden. The Swedish glass blowing is a lot different from American style glass blowing or Italian style glass blowing. I've done some sculpting too. Like I took a class with Raven and Kelly, so I know how to like make like a rose and that kind of thing. And my older sculptures are those It's Okay to Be Weird minis and night lights. They're all bumpy, so that's like kind of a sculpting way. But there's no sculpting tools with that. That's still blown using blow penti and then torching and then blowing. So a lot of color stuff too, stuffed cups, overlays. Yeah, mainly blowing though, not so much sculpting.
And what about the neon work? So you've got a good amount of flame working experience too?
Well, yeah, I'd say that. I mean, I'm definitely a better glass blower for sure. Like that's what I classify myself as a glass blower. But I took a class at the glass factory where I'm working now, and there were 3 neon professionals there: Michael Fleckner, Tommy Gustav Sköld, which he is like a amazing dude. And Michael Fleckner is really awesome too. But I love Tommy. I love Michael too. Whatever. And then there was this guy from England who I don't remember his name. I think it was Matt or something. Super sweet guy. But Michael, so I was just like, oh my God, I need to learn how to do this. This is so cool. Like with the big flame and like with the tube and how it's all moving around. I had to learn how to do it. So I contacted Michael later on that year and actually went out to Los Angeles to apprentice with him for about 7 weeks. And that's where I learned how to do all the basic bends. I made some signs, learned how to bombard. It was a really great experience. And I think it was really important for me to get into the neon because I'm so interested in light and making experiential work for people. Like I think earlier I was just talking about like my production stuff because I'm really into like making products that help spread self-love to people. That's what I'm all about. But I also want to make this interactive installation work with the light and with sound and just anything that will help an individual draw them into the present moment. So I'm really excited about combining the neon with the light vessels here in the spring. That's the next step. And maybe work with some plasma too. I took a plasma course as well, which is fun, but neon's a lot more fun, I think.
It's so cool. Neon is so hard. So it sounds like you just have no problem just picking up and going somewhere crazy and just living a new experience. Is that hard for you or?
I think it goes in waves, but honestly, I love adventure to be complete. I mean, when I moved away from Seattle, that was a huge step for me, moving to Sweden and starting over. I remember when I moved here with a bag and like there wasn't anywhere for me to stay. There were no rooms, no houses or anything, and I was totally freaking out. But I don't know, it's kind of fun not knowing where you're going to end up in a way and just kind of following the flow. This is same thing of when my friend Andrew and I drove across country to go to LA, that was, it's a mix. I think you learn so much by just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, I think, or things where you don't have any control, where you're just like going for the goal or for like this dream of what you want. Like, I want to learn how to do neon and I'm going to do this to get there. And that's like so magical, I think, in a way, because you learn so much about yourself in that process. Does that make sense?
Oh God, yeah. The putting yourself in uncomfortable positions thing or situations, that really is one of the hardest things for me, but it's when I always grow and learn the most, just meeting you at the conference, for instance, just getting there. But I admire all the traveling because I'm such a homebody. So it's hard to get out of your space.
Yeah, no, totally. I love growing though. That's the whole thing. Like, I really love growth. I was just looking at some pictures last night. I was going through like working on my website or whatever, and I found these pictures just 3 years ago when I was at the National School of Glass, and I look completely different. And that's got to say something just in 3 years. So it's pretty cool.
Can you explain more what you mean by you want to help people through your work, like spread self-love? Can you tell us more about it? It sounds like you spent a lot of time disassociating and you got through that by being more present. So is that kind of how it comes back around again?
Yeah, well, it's an everyday thing, because it's like in learned behavior from when I was a child growing up. So it's a constant thing. I think it's going to be a lifelong thing too. So about spreading self-love, I think it's super important to me because I just know what it feels like to not love the self. And it's something that I struggle with every day. Like now I'm getting to the point where I'm really thinking loving thoughts the majority of the time. But I think it's something that I'm going to have to be consciously working on the majority of my life. And I think it's something that a lot of people, I'm generalizing now, but I'm basing it on my own experience, but I think a lot of people don't talk about the anxiety and like the depression and the things that we're going through. And especially now when we're going through such an interesting time with this pandemic where it's just this constant state of fear. And again, like going back to the metaphysics, I believe that everything is energy and everything's vibration, right? So they're really just, and if you talk about emotions, that's energy in motion. And they're really just two main frequencies, and that's love and fear. So like all the emotions that we have, like anger, sadness, depression, they're all fear-based emotions, whereas all the higher vibrating emotions are love-based, right? So I'm all about like changing my vibration so that I can manifest the life that I want, which is like this loving, peaceful, authentic lifestyle, a life where I can do what I love and then also help others wake up to their own purpose, because everyone's different, and that's what's so beautiful with everyone and everything, like we're all these beautiful individuals that are unique in our own special way. And it's just so beautiful, it's just like, why are we all trying? I think like there's this like stigma that we all have to fit into like this mold, which that's just so sad, because where would the variety be then? Like why do we all want to be like everyone else? And I think I've struggled with that a lot of my life because I was always trying to please other people, right? Because I didn't have this center of self-love where I thought that I was worthy and valuable because I am the way I am. I had to please other people to get that validation. And I think society is set up in that way too, that we're constantly working for external validation. So that's what I'm trying to shift. That's what I'm shifting in myself. I'm not trying, I'm doing it because I see it reflected in my external reality. But I want to really help others in that process in some kind of way. I don't know if the products or if the installations are going to do it, but that's just what I'm working on now. And hopefully the people who resonate with that message will get drawn to it and get something out of it. And then they can spread it even further, because that's what it's all about, right? We're just helping each other evolve and become our best versions.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And that's one of the questions I always like to ask everyone is what their definition of success is, because it can be different depending. We look at somebody and they could be successful from our perspective, but from their perspective, they're still working on different things. And we all have a different definition of where we want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And no one's right and no one's wrong. I think that's again, like coming back to the self and like listening to like, what is it that I want? What is it that I want? I don't think that, I didn't ask myself that question for a really long time.
And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with asking themselves in general, where we are so focused on pleasing people. And I think that's really ingrained in our society as a whole. So That was just really beautiful.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. So I kind of want to get into things that are a little deeper. I know you already shared so much, but when we looked at your website when we were preparing for the podcast, it was just so honest and beautiful. And it just made me understand like who you are as a person and as an artist a little more. Can you tell us that story?
You mean my personal story? Or
Yeah.
Well, I think my childhood was definitely not the easiest. And it's something that I'm still in therapy for, I have a cognitive behavioral therapist, I have an attachment therapist, and then like there's someone in Seattle that I talk to. I don't know if I feel completely, I guess it's already on my website. So my my dad is an alcoholic. That's a fact. And growing up, things happened in my home that never should have happened. I experienced things at a very young age that I never should have had to experience, and those things definitely altered the way that I lived later. I definitely had a substance abuse problem for a really long time. I was constantly smoking marijuana, and again had those dissociative problems and or issues, I guess more so. And I've thought about like doing like sexual abuse workshops and things like that in the future, just because glass blowing is such a healing medium, bringing yourself into the present moment, because that's where all the power is. If you're in the present moment, then you can start really creating a different thing for your future, instead of just replaying the past or like having that energetic trauma in your body. That's like, yeah. It's been a trip. It's been a hardcore trip. I'm super grateful for everything that I've experienced, even if it wasn't all easy. And I think that it's helped make me the person I am today. And it's definitely made me appreciate like a lot of things in life. And I think I still have a long way to go, but again, it's an everyday thing,
Thanks so much for sharing all that. I know that maybe you don't feel super strong all the time, but listening to strong people like you share their experience helps other people kind of figure out how to manage what they're dealing with inside.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's my hope, like in the future, where I'm so strong in myself, where I can really help others, because I understand how painful it is. And it's so much more common than, because there's so much shame in that, things that happen in the home we don't talk about. And especially when they're our parents or grandparents or family members, people who are supposed to be there to love us and protect us. It's just so taboo. And the sad thing is that a lot of abuse happens in the home.
And it's almost because we make it so taboo that's why it becomes perpetuated.
Absolutely. That's how the cycle continues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's say that you're having a really hard day, like something set you off and you aren't quite able to find your positive wave. What tools or what resources do you use to get yourself out of that mindset?
Well, there's this meditation that I'm using right now that's been great. I totally recommend it. It's called Hollow Sync. Been using it for the past 6 months now. And what it does is it helps the brain go through these different brainwave patterns that normally we don't go through, because we're in such a high level of stress. Or I'm generalizing again, but like most, we're usually in this beta brainwave pattern, which is a really high or fast pattern. And then the other time we're in this delta brainwave pattern, which is when you're in deep sleep. So this program helps the brain actually go through the different tiers, the alpha, theta, and then delta. So it helps to like reprogram the brain in a way, or rebalance the brain halves. So that's something that I do on a daily basis. It's an hour meditation that I do. I also, I did this codependency course this past summer, which has been really great. And that's helped me a lot with my people pleasing. It's still something that I work on every day. But when I get triggered, oh man, it's different. It's different each time. Sometimes I just totally lose it and I just have to go smoke a cigarette or something, and I'm just like, sometimes I freak out. And then other times I use like a breathing exercise, maybe that doesn't happen so often, or I just go and like get some space, get away from people. Journaling is great. I love journaling. I journal almost every day. I think it's really important to connect back to the self and then not to run away from the emotions. Like when the triggers happen, I think it's really important to go into that space, not deny it, not go have a cigarette, even though I sometimes still do that. Really feel that emotion and then try to understand, where did that emotion come from? Like, what was it exactly that was said or done? And then try to like piece together the memory that's coming up at the same time too. I think that's really important.
That's so helpful for people. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah,
if you can email us a link to that meditation, then we can share it in the description of this for other people too.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. Do you have any questions, Christina?
Getting to a little bit lighter stuff again. You mentioned how Swedish glass blowing differs from American and Italian styles. Can you kind of touch on that for us?
Yeah, totally. So Swedish glass blowing, there's a lot of mold blowing, and they rarely use the marver, which I thought was really sad because I love marvering. But they're really good at blocking the glass and like keeping the furnace heat, the initial heat, and a lot of like post gathering. They're really good at that. They're really, really skilled glass blowers. It's just totally different way of doing it. A lot of paper, a lot of newspaper, a lot of blocks. Yeah. They work alone a lot too. Not a lot of teamwork, which I thought was like, that's something that I really missed too when I got over here. I was just like, everyone's just in their own little bubble. What's happening here?
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it's like out there? So for anybody listening to this interview in the future, it's 2020. We're in the middle of COVID. It's a pandemic happening. What is life like there for you now? Like, what's changed before and after COVID? And
I mean, I think that I've just heard from people about what it's like in the States. It's definitely not as strict as here in Stockholm and in Sweden as it is in the United States, I'd like to say. I don't see a lot of people with masks. There is some social distancing, but not so much, I'd say. For me personally, to be completely honest, I don't really watch the news anymore. I just think it's so negative. And since I'm in the process of reprogramming my belief system and my mind, my subconscious mind, I just don't want that negativity to be put into me. So like now I live out in the woods mainly, and I associate with just a few people, and it's just I don't even think about Corona very much, to be completely honest. Like today when I was working at Blossoknoda, we have the plastic thing in front, but I'm still talking to people normally, and it's just normal for me.
Can you tell us more about the studio that you work in? Imagine that Christina and I could fly over and visit. What is it like? Like, verbalize the visuals there.
There's one large glory hole, and it's got a hexador, which is really nice. You use like a foot pedal or a button, and it's like have you guys seen that before, the hexador? So it like opens up like that. Yeah, super cool. So one big glory hole, and then they've got a Florney next to that, which isn't in use. And then they have a wet dog furnace next to that. And the pipe warmer. The pipe warmer is great. It heats up the pipes really fast. It's got the flame coming from the left, so that's super nice. And then a little hole, small glory hole with a small hexador, and then an even smaller hole next to that they plug in to where the small hexador is normally when it's not in use. So, and then there's to the right, when you come into the door, all the glory holes are on the left-hand side. You've got your 2 benches, the 2 furnaces there. And then to the right, you have bench seating, like audience seating going up. So people, it's a museum. It's the Glass Factory Museum, I guess it's called. So when it's open, now it's closed due to COVID. I guess that's one thing I don't think about it. Usually people come in and they sit on the bleachers and they watch the glass blowers make work.
Is it in like a warehouse or an old building or a new building or in a city?
It's out in the country. It's in an old glass factory. So Boda Glasbruk, and it shut down in the early thousands, I'd like to say. It was built in 1865. And, what's really sad is that all the glass like died in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. So everything got moved over to Asia, and then all the glass blowers lost their jobs. So Buda used to be kind of a bumping little town. Now there's probably less than 100 people that live there. Yeah, so that's kind of important, I think, to revitalize the whole glass community here and relocalize it, because there's so much history in Swedish glass and we're kind of losing it in a way. Well, we are losing it.
That's so interesting. There's actually a company in Vermont that is near us that they specialize in that style of glass blowing. It's cool to see how it went from over to America and they continue in that style.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so is it like a tourist town? Like, how does the museum get people in to go see it?
Well, it's run by the municipality, Emmaboda, and they have different artists that come and rent the hot shop, but they don't usually make their own work. They rent the glass blowers as well. That's another difference here in Sweden. There's a lot of they call them formgivare. So artists like design the work, but they don't necessarily blow the work. So that's a difference here, I think. So artists come, and then now different artists are actually going there and renting studio spaces there. So I have a studio in my contract since I'm working on their neon thing. I have a studio, and then people like Hanna Hansdotter and Maria Bang Espersen and let's see, Nils Olle Franzén and Amy Kruger, Jonas Janau, Frida Lundén Mjörk. All these people are like going there now. So that's nice. It's starting to become like a community, which is super exciting. And I think they advertise, I think that there could be a lot more happening at the Glass Factory. I think neon's going to bring in a lot more people because everyone's just super interested in learning that. And then also, I think having some kind of events and like bringing in artists from different places too would be great, and having different courses and stuff. But they do some of that, the neon course that I took there, they brought in different artists. So they do already do some of that, but there could be a lot more. There's so much potential for the Glass Factory. It's super exciting. It's still really new too. It's only been around like 10 years or so.
Do you feel that you've always been, like in all of your traveling, do you feel like you've always been welcome within the glass community, or do you feel that people have kind of put you down or maybe brushed you off a little, or maybe different depending on where you've been and what you're doing?
No, I think I've always been pretty welcomed. Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever had any issues with I mean, I think really that's all in my head for the most part, like if someone's not nice to you, that's like kind of their own thing in a way, what are you going to do? It's like, just keep on keeping on, just keep doing your thing. And then like, if they have an issue, they can deal, right?
Yeah, totally. We've talked to a lot of different people, and I always ask that question, and a lot of people have said they've always felt really welcome, and then there's been a few women in class that have felt that they were a little bit undermined, but it's kind of cool to hear that it's just more open and accepting of a community.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I just don't take any crap anymore. I used to when I was younger, like when I blew glass, I got to blow glass in Murano, which was awesome. Um, that was an interesting experience. The guy like tried to take the pipe out of my hands and stuff because he was drunk, and I guess he didn't like that I was a female and blowing glass. Um, but I just kept going, and I just kept making the glass, and then I was done. I handed him the punty back.
So if you were to tell your younger self something, like the biggest lesson that you've learned that would have helped you through some hard times, what would it be?
Oh man, good question. Don't care about what other people think. I think that's held me back quite a bit, worrying what other people were going to think about me. Yeah, I mean, obviously don't be mean to people, and like do your best and stuff, but yeah, don't hold yourself back because of what someone else might say or think. Who cares? Just do you.
I think it's so beautiful. I mean, we've only been talking for like 30 minutes, and honestly, I could have broken into tears multiple times, hit the heartstrings.
That's awesome.
Do you have any more questions, Christina?
I guess so. You kind of touched on the whole light thing and how glass is grounding. And I think it's really interesting to think about as light as like a grounding type of, I'm not really
force, maybe.
Yeah, I'm looking for the right word. But can you kind of touch on that as your inspiration for your work a little bit more? I just think it's really interesting.
You mean the way I want to bring people into the present moment, or try to?
Yeah, with like light play.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the whole thing with the being, with my light installation, with that was I wanted to engulf the senses. So I had the music playing by my friend Jesper Molsten, which is like super. It feels super spiritual. It's not really religious, but it feels like you're in like this I don't know, church-like building or something. It's got really acoustics, and he's going through all these like different like tones with his voice. So that's supposed to help like bring you into the space. And then with the light, I think what's interesting is that as the music plays, you're like following with the cell phone with the music, and then all of a sudden you just get stuck with the rainbows and the light, and you're just following that, and it's like you sync with the music and the light. And the whole idea is that I want people to feel like they are the light, because that's what I believe we're all light beings. That's our natural state. And so that's what I was hoping for. And the reason why I use the cell phone too was because I think it's really interesting that we live in this awesome time with all this communication and technology that's supposed to help link us together. But then at the same time, like when I was living here, even today, it's on the subway, people are on their phones scrolling. They're not connecting with each other. They're not talking with each other. It's like this whole wall between us, so this great tool that's like supposed to help connect us is also dividing us in a way. That didn't really answer your question, but
That's okay. That was great.
Yeah, I think that was really cool to understand that there's a little more to it than just making the piece and displaying it. You get into it. It's almost like an installation that you become involved with.
Yeah, that's what I want to make, because I think that's I want to create experiences for people, something that they become a part of. I think that's super important. I think that makes it more memorable too, and they have like this tie to it in a way.
And I think it's really cool that you're bringing in the cell phones, because when we really, as artists, we all know that everybody who goes to a gallery is just there to take all the cell phone pictures and share it on social media half the time. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to take something that sometimes can be annoying and make it a part of that interactive art. I love that.
Thanks. I wanted it to be accessible too to everyone, because most people have cell phones, that go and see work and things, even young children, 5-year-olds. So I wanted everyone to be able to participate.
When you're coming up with these design ideas, do you draw them out or do you work with any other materials to kind of work through the process?
I usually just sketch, or what I've found is that when I'm in the hot shop, just like I'll sketch out something, but then when I'm in the hot shop, it usually turns into something else. Like that's where I do some sketching as well, you know? Like I'm in the process of making a new product, and that came from a collaboration, which isn't going to be a collaboration anymore, but I'm going to continue making the glass. Like we decided it'd be cool if I just keep making the glass. And that came from an idea and it turned into something else completely different, you know? So I like that, like the sketching, I guess, in the hot shop, if that, yeah.
Cool. Cool to know. So you kind of like let the glass tell you what it wants to do, and then you step back and like sketch it out a little and then keep going with it.
Yeah, like I'll go on with the general idea, but then I just kind of let it become what it wants to become. So
Intuitive design.
yeah, a little bit.
I love it. This is a good conversation. Thanks for sharing so much. I know that it's hard to share things that you're still kind of working through, and it's really great to hear. That's one of our goals with the podcast, is kind of talk about all the things that maybe nobody's comfortable talking about, but we all need to hear, and you definitely did that for us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for letting me be on the show, or the cast.
Yeah. Christina, do you have any other questions?
I don't. I just am really grateful for all your vulnerability in this conversation. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. I think we're all in this together, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
If you had one last thing to tell everybody, what would it be? Don't care what other people think.
Yeah. Do you, like, do what you love to do. Figure out like what makes you happy and go for that. Yes, cheesy as it might sound, this is your life. And you know, you don't have to live it for anyone but yourself. And it's super excited, you know, like even if things are getting crazy out there and like the social in the media and like with our political systems and everything, I think we're on a precipice of something really beautiful. I think that we're in the process of evolving, you know, and it's always a little bit dark before the dawn. So
I love it. I love it. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Connected in Glass. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on the artists we interview and for updates on the podcast. You can find Jo's work at joandersondesign.com and on Instagram at Jo Andersson Design. That's Jo, J-O, Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-S-O-N. And find links to all of the tools Jo mentioned in this podcast in the description.